I know everyone is super excited for the Henry Cavill Warhammer IP collaboration between Games Workshop and Amazon Studios that will hopefully, finally, give 40k the television or movie property that it has always deserved and yet never actually managed to make, despite several attempts to do so. However, I find myself in the position to throw a little bit of cold water on everybody's expectations to douse them down just a little bit, as the latest investor report from GW gives us a couple of interesting little tidbits. First and foremost is the media section here, where they say, "We have not signed any contract in the period reported." Aha, but they have agreed in principle to explore opportunities to exploit RIP with Amazon Studios. So, I've also heard from a guy I've got inside of Amazon saying that there has been no money allocations, no plannings, no budgeting or anything like that. None of the logistics has been prepared to actually make a significant IP purchase. In other words, it is currently in the extremely early, maybe kinda should we kinda phase, rather than anything definite. No contract has been made, no clear plans have been put in place either, and the two sides are currently feeling each other out and trying to figure out whether or not this is an avenue that they wish to explore at all, and perhaps equally importantly, who's going to be fitting the bill. Because here's the thing, one of the things I mentioned when I first heard about this was that I was a bit surprised that Amazon would be willing to go on another such massive IP venture so early after the Rings of Power, which has gotten Amazon in a lot of trouble with its investors because, well, they were promised the next great Lord of the Rings show, and they got the Rings of Power. It's not the kind of situation in which you want to be trying to push another big IP and attempting to reassure those investors that, look, this time, I'm not being in your cornflakes. I'm being honest now. You see, we've even got a director that's done more than, get credits on like 2 episodes of Game of Thrones back in the day. God. Oh, the Rings of Power. They go on saying, we announced this in December 2022 after the half-year period. Now, this also tells me something else. So, we announced this in 2022. They didn't actually announce this, did they? They made a big declaration like, oh, Henry Cavill, 40k, Amazon, woo! As if it was already a done deal. That was what they announced. And to me, what I would think happened here is that they were in negotiations, Henry Cavill's name was floating about, there was a lot of enthusiasm, and then this leaked somehow. And it blew up, and everyone was like, yes, Cavill. And GW was like, oh my god, what do we do? Put out an announcement. That'll work, that'll calm them down. And it did. And it built up a lot of excitement as well, but I don't think GW actually meant to be quite as definitive in their statement as they were, which is why they are doing a little bit of a backpedal right now, and also bear in mind, of course, you are not allowed to lie in investor reports. We have nothing more to say at this stage. We will keep you informed. We remain confident we'll bring the world's Warhammer to the screen like you have never seen before. So, basically, no news, nothing has really happened, but, we remain optimistic. That's about it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean anything, because it is absolutely time to try and bring Warhammer to the big screen in a more proper form, and Henry Cavill is absolutely the man to do so, but GW is going to need outside money to do this well, especially as GW's own initiative, Warhammer Plus, appears to be an enormous flop. Which, hell, I've been on that bandwagon since the very beginning, since they basically announced this thing. I was not at all too sure this was going to work out. So what we got here is, launched in August 2021, it continues to delight and entertain a growing subscriber base. Warhammer Plus shows and animations have now been viewed over 5 million times. Over 5 million times. You may remember, I did a video on the previous investor report too, where they claimed the number a hell of a lot higher than that, which means they were probably doing exactly what me and Maka and many others speculated at the time. They were being creative with the definition of the word view. including people who had just, like, seen the Warhammer Plus page, but not actually subscribed or watched any material, or even people who had watched that on their YouTube channel, probably, as they claimed a lot more views. So, 5 million views over the course of a year and a half, roundabout, is not very good. In fact, it's genuinely awful. Like, this channel you're on right now, my secondary channel, is generating, what was it, 880-odd thousand views over the last 30-odd days? I mean, these are numbers that I get over the course of months, never mind a year and a half. Now, do bear in mind, of course, this is also a paid service, so you can't compare them directly, but yeah, that's not very good. Particularly also considering the sheer amount of PR and advertisement that GW put into the Warhammer Plus project, and even worse is, revenue is £3 million. Revenue being the very much so key word there. In the period, an associated development cost £2.4 million. So, here's a little bit of an interesting linguistical trick that they're using here. So, it's earning money. How can you say it's failing? £2.4 million in development cost alone. So that is a pure R&D that is figuring out how to do something. That does not include salaries, that does not include the various equipment they needed, that does not include all of the various nonsense stuff you're going to need in additional expenditures around a company like GW. It does not include software, it does not include anything that has to do with the day-to-day running of this actual show, which I guarantee you is a hell of a lot more than £600,000. I mean, hell, the Astartes guy alone is worth a salary of a couple $100,000 a year, at least. That man is a genius. And considering all of the other animators they've got working for them too, bear in mind that is not a cheap profession, plus all of the other staffers, all of the additional resources they require, the building of the studios, etc. Oh yeah, they're probably quite deep in the hole at this point. And the fact that they spent £2.4 million in R&D alone, I don't even know how they managed that. That is a ridiculous sum for what is essentially an animation studio, a camera, and a dude showing a battle report, but oh well. And subscriber numbers are 115,000. That is ridiculously low. 115,000 people are interested in watching the biggest Warhammer animation project event in GW history, with the guy who made Astartes on board. Granted, with a gun to his head, but nevertheless, he's there. With all of those shows that they poach off YouTubers, shows that were gaining hundreds of thousands and millions of views, making out with only 115,000 subs is pathetic. Especially as that also means that they didn't watch all that many shows either. 5 million views total divided by 115,000 subscribers. The service is simply not very popular, even amongst the people who are paying to watch it. But it is still going to be, again, like I've said previously, this thing will have been funded for several years before they even began, and they cannot admit this is a failure now, especially as they are in the process of remonetizing their IP and widening their focus on aforementioned monetization. Speaking of that as well, there was another interesting section right here. Social responsibility and sustainability. Actually, let's get back to this in one brief second, shall we? There's something else over here, wasn't it? Ah, yes. So, there is a bit of a scree here where they're basically explaining that they are going to continue to widen the IP. Our strategy is to exploit the value of our IP beyond our core tabletop business, leveraging multiple categories and markets globally. Now, what they're really meaning here is these: media, which means television / Warhammer Plus, video games, and general licensing, which is also basically just video games. They have no plans, it seems, to widen the actual core business using this, which is again a massive mistake. They should be digitalizing this shit, but oh well, I guess it's better for everyone if they don't. They can die like the fossil that they are. Hell, I'm surprised that 3D printing hasn't already done more damage to them, frankly. But the interesting thing here is, the board has overall responsibility for ensuring risk is appropriately managed across the group and has carried out a robust assessment, blah blah blah. IT strategy and delivery. With a number of significant business projects in play, all of which are dependent on IT support, there is a requirement for a robust IT strategy, which enables us to deliver key strategic projects as well as supporting day-to-day activities. So they are expanding their IT team here to keep all of these projects running, because many of them have, of course, suffered massive delays, like the Inquisitor TV show, which nobody seems to remember anymore, and has completely disappeared. So they're building up some kind of management structure to run all of this. Okay. They've also been working on the new version of Warhammer's online frame as well, but that has, according to the report, also been delayed massively again. Media. It is imperative that exploitation of our IP through media channels does no harm to our core business. Our creative media director's primary job, with the support of our global IP and product design director, is to ensure that any representation of our IP is aligned to our IP guidelines and is approved, correct, and consistent. They are fully supported by our in-house legal team, who will act when needed. So, a lot of people have seen this and thought, oh, this is great. GW is making sure that they are going to be able to protect their IP and deliver a proper 40k product if Amazon gets aboard. I don't know about that. I'm not so convinced that that's actually what that means, because the thing is, of course they're going to have to say they are going to protect their core business interest. Duh, it's an investor report. They have to. What is interesting is, ensure that any representation of our IP is aligned to our IP guidelines and is approved, correct, and consistent. So that IP guidelines actually has very little to do with the lore of the setting. It is the wider usage of the IP. It doesn't mean that they're going to make sure that the lore is accurate, or that there isn't going to be any female Space Marines or anything like that. It is simply that it is going to conform with the overall IP guidelines, which means that they're going to own the rights, etc., and that's why they bring in their legal team, as they mention here as well. It's stuff like you aren't allowed to use a GW entity or a trademark or whatever without the proper licensing. So I don't think this means that they're going to take any particularly proactive measures to defend the actual law of the setting. And the thing is too, I am 98% sure that what they're going to do is some sort of Primaris show, because that would absolutely be in accordance with their core business here, which is selling Space Marines. Again, I do really kind of hate their focus on power armor recently, but there is another point here. So the reason why I point this out beyond the obvious is this thing here: social responsibility and sustainability. Now, in previous investor reports, they made it very clear that they were not going to get any diversity hires, and they were going to continue to hire based on merit rather than race or skin color or gender or whatever. That was its own specific point. Now, that was kind of in accordance with British law, but it was also by many, including myself, seen as at least one last bastion against the straight-up diversity, and that is now gone, replaced by this. We have continued to focus on staff well-being, diversity, and inclusion. Now, we know what that means. They don't have to spell it out. They don't have to explain it. We know exactly what day is diversity and inclusion. It means that they are now hiring based on skin color. They are now hiring based on gender, and they are going to continue to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if over the course of the next 6 months to a year or so, we'll start getting a few leaks from inside of GW as to this process beginning to get into effect. And I do also suspect that the reason why they decided to change their policy on this now is because of Amazon. It is entirely possible that the reason why they're saying that they are, agreed, what was it saying here? We have agreed in principle to explore opportunities to exploit our IP with Amazon Studios. It might very well be that Amazon showed up and went like, okay, so we're interested in 40k, right? And we've been contacted with Henry Cavill's agent woman, who it seems to be has been instrumental in a lot of that, so great work, by the way. And they have concerns with GW's ESG score. Straight up, I'm not even really kidding, with their level of wokeness. And because Amazon has a straight up day policy, of course. And so they went to GW and said, okay, we are enormous racists and sexists, and we demand that you hire based along these lines, because we're a progressive company, you see. Can you guarantee this? And GW, having set it out in their investor agreements for years now that they're not going to do that, had to go, would we like to sell out to Amazon? Yes. Yes, we would. And so maybe the reason why nothing is happening and why Amazon is making no moves to allocate funds is because they have set out a list of demands for GW that GW is now going to have to go through and essentially check off and clear with Amazon before they can go forward with any real negotiations. Now, bear in mind, that is a rather pessimistic interpretation. I'm happy to admit that. This is the pessimist art speaking right here. Yet, we have seen this shit so many times before. We know Amazon is a very woke corporation. We know they have their diversity and inclusion policy written into the legalese of their company. So it would be difficult to imagine that they wouldn't push this on what would to them be a much, much, much smaller company. Especially as also, here's the thing. One of the rumors going around is that Amazon is running into genuine, serious legal issues with the Tolkien estate. Now, I can't confirm any of this, mind you, so take it for what it is, wild, unbased rumors, but it seems as if Amazon might not have been paying the royalties due to the Tolkien estate, and the Tolkien estate has gotten very annoyed about this, and they've also been pressuring Amazon to try and clarify what exactly they have the rights to, because of course in the Rings of Power, Amazon wildly overstepped what they actually owned of the Silmarillion. Like, they added stuff in there that should never have been in the show according to the rights they have. So, in this case, you gotta take a step back. What was Amazon's aim with the Rings of Power? Well, obviously, it was to seize the the Lord of the Rings. They wanted to take over the entity and replace it. That's why they took off book covers and replaced it with their own book covers. That's why they advertised this everywhere, even having their own goddamn masking tape to send out packages with. It's why they plastered advertisement for the show everywhere. It's why they banned reviews of it for 3 days to protect it against the backlash for it being crap. They put a lot of effort into trying to take over Lord of the Rings, and it seems they have failed miserably. And they are probably not going to make the same mistake again, especially with a far smaller entity. If they realize that they can bully GW, which I absolutely believe they are trying to do, then this would be the first logical step to make them bend over, kiss the cross, and accept the political ideology that is going to come along with any Amazon major investment and sponsorships. It might also be the first step on the road to sanitizing GW's property of 40k, or maybe even laying the groundwork for a bit of a friendly takeover attempt. Who knows? Now again, this is the more pessimistic interpretation, but would you put it beyond Amazon? Would you? I sure as hell wouldn't. But yeah, so to wrap it all up here, Wonder Plus is an enormous flop. Thank God for that, by the way, because if that was an actual success, I would have been a little bit sad, honestly, because I want this shit to fail. It has done so much damage to Warhammer as a hobby. It annihilated, again, as I've said so many times, the best fan content creation community, just full stop. Better than Star Wars, better than Star Trek, better than all of them. It was amazing, and GW killed it for this. Ugh. There is also this here, which again I think is probably the beginning influence of Amazon, absolutely, and this whole thing making sure that it is it's merely in the planning stage. That's the main takeaways. Like I mentioned in the top problems with the 140k TV show, this is going to come down to basically an internal power struggle, straight up. And if Cavill can make himself indispensable enough, he might just be able to win that power struggle and actually deliver the 40k entertainment that we want. However, it is also entirely possible that we are going to get another Witcher on our hands, where Cavill will do as best as he can and probably make the show a hell of a lot better than it should, because again, The Witcher would never have gotten a season 2 without Cavill, but at the end of the day, he is but one man. And without him, we get Blood Origin. Oh, God help me. We'll have to wait and see, but this has certainly doused my expectations just a little bit. Do let me know what you think in the comment section down below, though, as I'm very interested in hearing your opinions on the matter as well, and whether or not I'm simply being overly cynical, which, on the one hand, I kinda hope, and yet on the other, experience. Anyways, until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon. Did I do that twice now? I might have. Have a good day.